All right, well, this is closer towards our scheduled time for the evening. We are dealing with one more, hopefully the last one of these tornado warnings. And this is right over that Delaware line, including Cecil County. You can see here, this is highlighted with that red flashing associated with a severe thunderstorm warning that was issued earlier in the evening. This is through 11:15, so about 15 more minutes of this severe thunderstorm warning. And then once again, this Cecil County, Maryland tornado warning. And this actually pushes over into Delaware. And I'm going to look a little bit more into the reasoning behind this. We do see a little bit of that coupling, as we've been talking about tonight, near Chesapeake City. You can see a little bit of the mixing of the reds and the greens there. And you do see a little bit of that fuchsia color there. So we are seeing signs that this has rotation, at least radar indicated certainly here, but also that this one has a little bit more of evidence of circulation wanting to make its way down. And so with this, we're going to talk through it. We have until roughly 11:30 for our normal broadcast anyway. I'll ping pong with Kelly Swoop here, who is also in, but we do see rotation with this little batch of thunderstorms. And this little cell here, spanning from Elkton to Chesapeake City, you can see it's a little bit of a space here along 213 between this little cell here or cluster and then this one here. That is more of the primary concern for that rotation. Now, once again, we looked at storm relative velocity, which we've been checking all night here. It looks like a lot of that activity is actually to the north of Chesapeake City, just barely to the north, and pushing into portions of Delaware as well. And once again, we are seeing a little bit to the south here of Chesapeake City, here with base velocity, just an indication that we are dealing with some rotation. Correlation coefficient isn't overly impressive, but if I turn on lightning here and zoom out, lightning has not been the easiest to look at tonight just because so much has been going on with this cluster of thunderstorms. And I think at one time we had 5 or 6 tornado warnings across 3 states. So we've had a lot going on. I see a little bit of lightning to the north of Elkton. This doesn't look overly strong, but once again, the National Weather Service has been cautious tonight. And I think they're right in doing so with that rotation being present on radar here. And I'm looking with our chat, and we've seen a little bit of talk here, but nothing on this particular cell as far as the tornado rotation goes. So I'm going to toss it to Kelly here. I'm going to read this text, and then we'll circle back.
And this looks like, Abigail, it pretty much followed the pattern that we were looking at from earlier in the day, from Anne Arundel and Howard County to the Eastern Shore to now Cecil County, heading on to Delaware for the next stop for the storms that we've been monitoring tonight. Baltimore City, Baltimore County, not having nothing other really than rain, what we're seeing tonight. There were no tornado warnings in that area this evening. A lot of heavy rain in the city as well as different parts of Baltimore County. I talked to my family in Perry Hall, and my daughter talked to my family in Perry Hall, and my daughter said it hadn't even rained at that point in Perry Hall this evening, but I'm sure they'll see some later on throughout the evening. Not hailing like what we thought earlier, but it was just heavy rain. In terms of talking to our crews that were out in the field this evening, no major power outages. We've been on top of that as well this evening. Abigail saying earlier that this was concerned, and it kind of lived up to it being a mainly rain event, which we've seen. And take a look at some of this video that we shot from downtown. Is this downtown? Downtown like early this evening. The rain was coming down. At one point, it was dry, absolutely nothing, and then a downpour that lasted only for a short period of time. Big concern about, like you said, flash flooding, something that Mayor Brandon Scott talked about earlier in this evening, sending out messages on social media, and you could see why there would be concerns for flash flooding as we saw this evening as the rain came down. Abigail, you get a chance to digest any of that data coming in yet?
So they're not talking about this over here towards Cecil County. They're reviewing some of the storms that pushed in earlier. They've been talking about what they've seen as far as reports on social media, from viewers, everything that pushed through earlier. And the main consensus is that we got a lot of rain. And that seems to be very true across portions of the state, not only on the eastern side as of now, but we still have a few flash flood warnings still lingering. One in Annapolis in Anne Arundel County for a flash flood warning until 4 a.m. And then one that clips the city proper and portions a little further to the south in Howard County. It's extended throughout both here, and it looks through 11:15. Now, a lot of that rain has stopped in the city proper for now. We still have rain on the docket as we roll into our Saturday. Now, it may seem like we're not talking about this system very much over towards the Delaware state line. It's mostly because we are seeing some rotation with it. It is radar indicated. We're seeing a little bit of that coupling from earlier, but it is moving very much so towards that Delaware state line. We're seeing a little less evidence of that rotation as we check at 11:05 this evening. And by this here, what we saw near Chesapeake City, this vibrant fuchsia color just to the south of Chesapeake City about 2-3 minutes ago, has now pushed to the north and east and over that state line. Now, with the history of the National Weather Service throughout this evening, they've allowed these warnings to stay for the duration of the time allotted. And for this one, it is 11:30. So we still have 25 minutes if they keep the same pattern as they've had throughout the evening. We did have an issue earlier on in the evening between our systems, the National Weather Service being the authority to issue watches and warnings, us being the mouthpiece here. But our system, WSI, MAX systems, what we use for our graphics and radar, have a little bit of a delay sometimes from the National Weather Service's system. So we check back and forth through our chat, which we've been doing periodically throughout the evening to get information, to get reports, and to talk about the duration of these watches and warnings. And there was a general understanding that there was a slight delay with a few of these warnings that were issued earlier in the night. So with this, I will say, give or take a few minutes, unless they really allow this to expire early, I think right around that 11:30 marker, this will be allowed to expire. I'm not seeing any more lightning associated with it. A lot of that separate cell, it's really messy here with radar, but that separate entity, we're gonna call it, near Elkton and near that I-95 corridor in really the heart of Cecilton, in Cecil, and we are dealing with that separating, and so it's losing a little momentum, at least on the Maryland side of things. And once again, we've gone through it all night. SR, storm relative velocity, and then base velocity. Both of these things help us look inside the storm because reflectivity is not really showing a clear picture as to that rotation, how it's forming. Is it being sucked in? Is it a traditional hook? What are we looking at? And so when we look at base velocity and storm relative velocity, this gives us an idea of if that storm is rotating aloft in the clouds and if we're going to be able to see that rotation with winds. It also gives us an idea of the direction of the winds as well. We touched on it earlier. Red away, green towards, and radar is a little further to the south and east, south and west from this eastern corner of the state. And so the reading may be a little off. I think we have a Delaware station that we are able to look at as well. And that shows the rotation a lot better, actually, with this. You see that bit of coupling here with storm relative velocity. It is right over A96. You can see right here where this arrow is circling. That is what prompted that tornado warning. And it's very warranted that you can see here with that coupling. Now, it's no longer on our side of things. And so I think it's okay to say, Chesapeake City, you're for the most part in the clear. I would still stay in your shelter or at least very close by, because with the pattern of these systems, we still have rain, we still have flooding potential, we still have lightning, not necessarily with this cell here, but history of it, and some gusty winds. And so, with compromised soil, possibly compromised surroundings, I would stay in your safe space until this warning has been allowed to expire. Once again, to side with the National Weather Service and to err on the side of caution. With this, I also want to look at base velocity. You can see here that fuchsia color, more of an indication that this is rotation, and we're seeing a little bit more evidence of why this warning was issued. We see a little bit of reflectivity bouncing back with this correlation coefficient, but it's not overly impressive. You can see a little bit here of it wanting to form something, but I think much like the history of a lot of these storms, it's a loft. We have not had a confirmed tornado sighting for Maryland as of yet. We had, last time I checked, and this needs to be updated as far as my information goes, but around the 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock hours, I think at one point we had 14 tornado warnings that had been issued. So this has been a very, very tornado, at least rotation prone system. It is grouped together, it is dissipated, and it has regrouped on more unstable ground. And we're seeing a lot of this. We had a little rain towards the northern tier of the state earlier on in the afternoon and in the evening hours. It really didn't touch much of the northeastern corner. It was mostly to the south. So this is really, and it's already been allowed to expire. You can see right there, it's just in Delaware now. So we are no longer talking about a warning for the state of Maryland. I think it is okay to say we are at least right now in the all clear for thunderstorms this until 11:15, and at least that tornadic spin, we have seen that diminish. We'll be back after this break. We're going to regroup and then get back to the newscast.